Hey, and speaking of Edward Halterman, my good buddy, here he is on the line with us right now. Edward, welcome to the Phil Friedman Outdoors Radio Show.
All right, my brother. How you doing?
Hey, that was a lot of fun the other night. You were hooked up. You were calling in live. There was a guy here when I was doing the recording with you, and he said, it sounds more like an albacore bite. You were really having fun.
Oh, man, it was awesome, man. Unfortunately, I got down there just a hair too late because what I was trying to do is, it was a high tide coming in and stuff, and I was going to fish them into the dark. But what ended up happening was I got there right as the sun had already set, and so, the bite was just wide open crazy for, like 15 minutes, and then as soon as it got dark, I thought it was going to get better, but it was actually the opposite. They just totally shut off. So I ended up walking up and down the beach last night, probably 4 or 5 miles, and didn't get anything after that. But it was, it was crazy. I mean, right in the trough, same spot as I got them last week, same everything. So I'm thinking that new tide coming up, this weekend, you and I got to go hammer these things, man.
I'm in, man. I'm in. Now, when you say same thing, for some of the listeners who were not with us on last week's show, what is the same thing? Tackle, bait, fill us in.
Yeah, well, last week, we talked about I was heading up to Malibu and stuff, and I went up there, and the water was, like, crystal clear. And my good buddy Doug Lowry, he says, hey, man, this water's too clear. We need to get out of here. And this is after, almost 2 hours of trying it. And then I kind of looked at him, and I was like, I never heard that before, because you'd assume clear water is going to be awesome conditions and really fun. But what ends up happening is I guess these things like, sand kicked up, whitewash coming back, they like more dirtier conditions than they do clear, because I think they can just see everything too much then. But we ended up coming back down here to El Segundo, and then same conditions. But I decided, I'd heard all these old-timers talking about walking and just looking up and down the beach for troughs and holes and whatnot. And so I walked in probably another 1.5 miles, and I found exactly that. And it was just the best bite I've ever had on these things. As you know, I'm kind of still learning the game a little bit, but I'm starting to learn how to read the beach a lot better. And I just saw this little dark-colored water spot, and that was basically a trough. And when the water comes in and rushes back out, it kind of launches it up in the air. And that's how you know there's a hole right there as the water's receding back. So I just, I threw a bait in there, and right away I was bit and knew it was a heavy fish because it loaded up the rod really good. And then the only problem was I didn't have anything to carry bait, so I had to run 1 mile back to get to our bait bucket. Then I got like 3 2-pounders in a row or whatever. And then by that time, Doug was looking at me like, holy cow. And so he grabbed the bucket and he hightailed it to me. So it was pretty cool. And then it was just game on. And we were using the Sidewinders, and that's the kill bait. And hardly anybody fishes that, just the old timers. So I learned from some great guys, Ron Schmidt, of course, Doug knows, and then Fred Oakley, guys like that. And yeah, so that's basically what I do. And then I use a longer leader. Most people use shorter leaders. I mean, I even said on your show last week, I think I said like an 8 to 12 inch leader, but I measured it last night. It's more like 20 to 24. So I use a super long leader. And most of the guys advise against that, but hey, it's working for me. If it ain't broke, I'm not going to try to fix it.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, you mentioned dark-colored water. That is not to say dirty water, right? It's just darker?
Yeah, well, the darkness is like, it's like when you walk up to it, you can tell that the water color changes and gets darker because there's a hole there. So it totally changes the dynamic of, how it looks when you're approaching it. So I never saw that before, and like I said, it's a learning experience for me as well, just trying to read these conditions. And even like if you look at a wave and it's kind of rolling in and then you see like a flat spot somewhere in there, that's generally a hole as well. So you want to stand right there and fish it. And then another thing that's really good is if you do happen to find sand crabs or even the little tiny, I don't know what the heck you call them. There's some kind of clam-looking thing that's probably like 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. If you see any of those laying on the ground, always fish right in front of that because they eat those things, believe it or not, because when I fillet them, I've seen those in the belly almost in every single one. So definitely, if you see that, even if you don't have other conditions, you might want to sit in front of that because, they're going to be sitting on that bait for sure.
Edward, we've had some reports, and I'm just curious if you've seen any of this. We've had some reports from in the Malibu area about a lot of corvina, not biting,
yes,
but starting to see them. Are you seeing any of that?
Not down here, but I definitely saw a few when I was up there, and so, yes, they're definitely in there. And I got a buddy that's fishing up there pretty religiously, and he's hooked a couple, but he said they're real finicky right now. So he says, probably in another 3 to 4 weeks that thing will turn on pretty good.
Oh, man, I can't wait for that. That's just going to add another dimension to this already great surf bite. The surf perch bite has been absolutely magnificent, and I'm going to hope that it's going to continue. Hey, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on Philip Friedman Outdoors Radio, and we'll look forward to having you on again next week, Edward.
As always, much love, my brother. Take care, man.
All right, great job by Edward Halterman with some outstanding updates. He'll be keeping us in touch with not only the Santa Monica Bay, but he bounces around everywhere all season long, so you can rely on Edward for some awfully good reports. Those Sidewinder crabs, oh, man, have they been red hot on the big barred perch. That's exactly what you want to be using. And that signal on the Corvina that we talked about, Jenny Wiley is going to be joining us, and she'll be talking to you a little bit more about that. It's a very good signal. It means that spring is on the way, and we're almost ready to have that kick into gear, and I'll tell you right now, I can't wait to see that happen. All right, great report there from Edward Halterman. He's our main man and does a great job. Hey, I'm looking down on the line, and it looks like Jenny Wiley from Wiley's Bait and Tackle in beautiful Malibu, California. Jenny, welcome to Phil Friedman Outdoors Radio.
How are you, Phil?
Hey, it is great
to hear your voice.
Great to hear your voice. Always wonderful to have you on the show. And we've got all kinds of stuff to talk about. We've got halibut near the pier. We've got a spot fin croaker taken, and we've got a lot of corvina. Why don't I just turn it over to the expert, and that's you, Jenny. Fill us in.
Oh, my goodness, you're too kind.
The pressure's on.
Well, Bill Brady from Malibu had a spot fin croaker. Caught that. He was fly fishing with an orange shrimp fly on 8-pound test in Santa Monica. He does all catch and release, but I did see the picture of it, and he said he thought it was around 5 to 6 pounds. So that's the first spotty that we've seen in this area in years. And the other story, we've had some nice cabezon again. The biggest one, the largest one this week was 4 pounds, 8 ounces, caught on squid, and he lives right up around Las Flores area, which is about 3 miles up from the store. So we've had a lot of cabezon from these rocky areas, and, excuse me, people are still talking about the perch up north. I've got one of the club derbies coming up in a couple of weeks, and they say the perch have been running close to 2 pounds, and they've had some from the Santa Monica area. Another thing, as you mentioned, I can't believe it, but the corvina are in. A lot of people that live along here, Phil, are talking about seeing corvina close into the surf. And I was talking to someone this morning, and they said, oh, yes, they've seen a lot of corvina. So that's the story this week.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I wanted to drop back for a moment and talk to you a little bit about fishing from the rocks for the cabezon. What's the appropriate rig, and what's the best bait when you're doing that kind of thing?
Most of them I've seen caught on squid, and usually it's a simpler rig. Most of the fellows use a torpedo sinker. They're using one hook because when you get around those rocks, you want something simple. You want to stay away from the beaded leaders and a hook on a long leader. When you're halibut fishing, it's a completely different setup, but simple in the rocks.
Excellent. And also, I want to drop back to that spot fin croaker. You said that it's the first one taken in many years. You don't catch a lot of them up there in that neck of the woods, do you?
No, not in our area. There used to be a fellow, he's passed away many years ago, that used to get them up around Oxnard area, and they'd run for maybe a month. And he used to use bloodworms for those. and then they were gone. But we just don't get them in this area. It's rare.
Excellent. Go ahead.
I have a picture on the wall of one that was caught right down at Coastline Drive a couple of years ago, and he got it right in the rocks on mussels, and it was 9 pounds.
Wow, that is a beautiful fish.
I kept the picture because it was so unusual to have that caught in this area.
Yeah, well, that is good news, and you have to think that all that corvina that you're seeing in the surf and that your anglers are reporting to you there at Wiley's Bait and Tackle in Malibu, you've got to think that bodes well for a great spring, right?
Let's hope so, Phil. We sure do need it. Yeah, it's unusual. Mm-hmm.
Hey, halibut around the pier, a lot of halibut being seen and a few being caught also.
That's what they're telling me, but they say they're just short. A lot of them running maybe around 15 to 18 inches. But there's a lot of bait around the pier, they tell me, so that usually brings the halibut in.
Jenny, you mentioned the perch, and, of course, that's been a big part of what's been going on this winter. It has been spectacular. Maybe for some new listeners to the Phil Friedman Outdoors Radio Show, you could just tell everybody how big these perch have been and how significant a winter this has been. It's been the best in many, many years, hasn't it?
Many, many years. We just haven't seen them this size, even during the spawning season, which we're coming into now. The last 5 years, they haven't been as big as what we've seen in October, November, and December. So we should, when the clubs start having their derbies again, we should start seeing some really big perch, and they will be spawning.
You've seen them, several over 3 pounds, and there was a guy who came in with a photo of one that measured 24 inches.
That's right, 4 pounds.
Wow.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah, I've weighed them in. Excuse me, I've weighed them in at 312, 310, a lot of 3-pounders. Very unusual.
Wow, that is fantastic. There's a gentleman by the name of Edward Halterman, and he called your store. He loves to listen to the show and loves your reports, and he went down there in the Santa Monica Bay and said that he had as much fun catching these big perch, and he had easy limits. We posted a photo of it, but he had wonderful fishing. And, Jenny, this is a guy who in the past I have dealt with in terms of fishing for white sea bass and big yellowtail, and I've told him where to fish at Catalina, and he was a big game guy or die. Couldn't care less about catching a perch in the surf. He's a convert now. He says that he had as much fun catching those darn perch as he did fishing sea bass at Catalina Island.
Isn't that amazing? That's wonderful to hear.
Well, let me tell you.
He's lucky. He's lucky it's a good year.
I know, exactly. Well, he's hooked now, so there's no turning back. Listen, you're the best, and if we want to get in touch with you for the rest of this gorgeous week, and it's been beautiful weather, hasn't it? How do we do it?
Oh, it was